All right, so we're diving into self-motivation today, especially for studying. You guys sent us some really cool stuff from a university, like a study skills sheet,
Yeah.
and also like a whole motivational guide. So let's see what they say about how to stay on track, even when you're like facing a mountain of textbooks.
Yeah, it's interesting. One's about like actual study techniques,
Mm,
but the other one's about the psychology, so we can look at it from both sides.
yeah. Okay, so first, how to deal with like a huge project. You know when it feels overwhelming, like when I had to write my thesis, I was just like completely overwhelmed. But these sources, they say, break it down.
Right. Like it's a video game,
Mhm.
instead of like the big boss at the end. You have quests. So first you do the research quest, then the intro quest, then the discussion quest, and then finally like the victory lap, the conclusion.
Right. I love that. It doesn't feel so scary then. But what if you break it down, but you're still not motivated?
Well, both sources say you got to connect it to your goals. Like it's not about the grade itself. It's what that grade will let you do.
Oh, so like getting into your dream program
Yeah.
or getting a cool internship or maybe just like proving something to yourself. That's what keeps you going. But wait, isn't a good grade itself like a motivator? Because you've learned something.
Oh, yeah, that's true too. It's like,
Yeah.
it can be both. You want the reward, but you also want to actually learn.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we broke down the task, we found our why. So how do we actually like keep doing it? It seems like these sources, they like routines.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They both say, if you make it a habit, it's not a chore anymore. Like brushing your teeth. You just do it.
Yeah.
But there's this one cool thing the university guide says, to add some motivational rituals,
Rituals, what do you mean?
like you could do a quick meditation.
Ah.
Or go for a walk.
Yeah.
To clear your head. Before you start studying. Like a warm-up at the gym.
Oh, yeah. I used to do that. Before presentations, I'd listen to music and imagine myself like totally nailing it. It helped so much.
See? You were already doing it, basically. You're telling your brain, okay, it's time to focus now.
So it's not just about willpower, it's about being smart. Okay, cool. But even with a routine, it can get boring. How do you keep it fresh?
Both sources say, you got to change things up. Try different stuff.
Yeah, I remember. I would study with friends one day, then alone in a coffee shop the next. I even tried making songs about historical dates, just to keep it interesting.
Exactly. Keeps your brain from getting bored. And it also uses different parts of your brain. The guide talks about this thing, the 3 R's of habit formation. Reminder, routine, reward. So the variety is like a reward to make the habit stick.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we got break down the task, find your why, have a routine, but keep it fresh. What's next?
Okay, this is where the mental game comes in. The university guide talks about it. Goes, how believing in yourself affects your motivation. There's this theory, the expectancy theory of motivation. Basically, it says,
Right.
if you think you're going to fail, you probably will.
Oh, wow. Like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Like if you go into a
Yeah.
test and you're already sure you're going to bomb it, you're not going to do well.
That makes sense. So it's all about self-efficacy then, like believing you can do it. But how do you do that? When you're feeling stuck?
Well, the guide talks about SMART goals, but I feel like everyone's heard of those. So how can we make them actually work?
Yeah. Like, how do they apply to me?
Maybe instead of just listing them out, you could personalize them. Like if you're a visual learner, you could make a colorful chart to track your progress.
Oh, that's a cool idea. So it's not just about checking boxes. It's about making them meaningful.
Exactly. The guide also says you got to develop an internal locus of control.
So, like, you feel in control of your life, not like things are just happening to you.
Right. Like you have the power to make things happen.
Yeah, that's got to be super motivating.
Absolutely. Oh, and one more thing. Remember how we were talking about distractions?
Oh, yeah. The phone.
Right. The study skill sheet's really clear about that. Minimize distractions,
Yeah.
especially your phone.
Yeah, no, it's so hard. I remember when I discovered the Pomodoro technique. It was a game changer. I set a timer for like 25 minutes of work and then a 5-minute break. It helped me stay focused.
That's a great example of using technology strategically because both sources, they say to minimize distractions, but they also say that some apps can be helpful for learning.
So it's about finding that balance between the good and the bad.
Exactly. You have to be mindful. Okay, so we talked about breaking down tasks, find your why, routines, variety, and believing in yourself. But there's even more to uncover.
Wow. This is awesome.
I know, right? So the next part, we'll dive into even more strategies for unlocking your self-motivation potential.
Okay, sounds good.
See you then. So you know how we were talking about breaking down tasks? Well, even after you break them down, those smaller chunks can still feel kind of scary.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You break down a chapter into sections, and then suddenly each section is like a mini mountain.
Exactly. So the study skill sheet says, instead of trying to study for hours straight, do short bursts of focus and take breaks.
Oh, okay. Like interval training for your brain.
Exactly. Like you wouldn't run a marathon without stopping to catch your breath.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And while we're talking about studying effectively, the study skill sheet also says, keep it simple.
What do you mean?
Like, don't overthink the techniques. Just find what works for you.
Oh, okay. So like doodling, mind maps, flashcards.
Exactly. It's all about making it fun.
Yeah, who says learning can't be fun?
Right. And it's not just about fun. It's about finding what helps you learn best. And this kind of goes back to technology.
Right.
Remember how we said it can be both good and bad?
Yeah, the study skill sheet was pretty clear about that. Like no phones allowed.
Right. Social media can wait.
Haha.
Yeah.
It's so hard to resist, though. I remember when I started using the Pomodoro technique, it was a game changer. I'd set a timer for 25 minutes of focus and a 5-minute break.
That's awesome. It's like you're using technology to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though both sources say to minimize distractions, they also say some apps can be helpful.
Oh, yeah. Like meditation apps or learning apps.
Right. So it's all about being mindful.
Okay, so we talked about study chunks and keeping things interesting. What about, like, fueling our brains?
Oh, yeah. Good point. The study skill sheet talks about that. Choose snacks that give you energy.
So, like fruits, nuts, yogurt.
Yeah, those are good. You want to avoid those sugar crashes that make you feel tired and unmotivated.
For sure. But what if you're eating healthy, but you're still feeling mentally sluggish?
Well, both sources talk about believing in yourself,
Hmm.
but in different ways. The study skills sheet just says, you got this.
Uh-huh. I like that. Like a little pep talk.
Right. Because it's easy to doubt yourself,
Right.
especially with school stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But the university guide, they go deeper. They talk about the expectancy theory of motivation again and how it's connected to self-efficacy.
Right. So if you believe you can do it, you're more likely to put in the effort.
Exactly.
But how do you build that belief when you're feeling stuck?
Well, the guide suggests a few things. Remember, we talked about SMART goals. Make sure to personalize them. They also talk about developing an internal locus of control.
So like feeling like you're in the driver's seat of your life.
Exactly. Not like you're just a passenger.
That's a good way to put it.
It's about recognizing that you have the power to shape your own outcomes.
Yeah, that's got to be super empowering.
Absolutely.
But what about when things get really tough? How do you balance pushing yourself with taking care of yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. And both sources talk about that too. They say self-care is essential.
Okay, so it's not selfish to take breaks and stuff.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't run a car on an empty tank.
Yeah,
If you're burnt out, you're not going to be motivated.
that makes sense.
So make sure you're getting enough sleep, eating healthy food,
Yeah.
staying hydrated, and moving your body.
Yeah, and don't forget about social connection,
Right. Both sources say that's important too.
like having a support system.
Exactly. Whether it's study groups or friends or online communities,
Yeah.
connecting with people who get it can be really motivating.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember one time I tried writing a song about the periodic table to help you remember the elements.
Yeah.
It didn't exactly become a hit,
Yeah.
but my study group thought it was hilarious.
That's awesome. It sounds like you had a good balance of work and fun.
We did. It's a good reminder that learning doesn't have to be lonely.
So in this part, we talked about manageable study chunks, keeping things interesting, fueling our brains, believing in ourselves, self-care, and connecting with others.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
What's next?
Well, now let's talk about how to actually create motivation instead of just waiting for it to happen.
Oh, okay. How do you do that?
The university guy talks about uncovering your incentive.
Uncovering your incentive.
Yeah, it's about figuring out what really drives you, like beyond just grades.
So like the crapassery.
Your deeper why.
Exactly. And they have this cool exercise.
Oh, tell me about it.
You make a list of things that bring you joy. And you write down when you last did them. Then you categorize them, like how much they cost, how much planning they need, and if there's solo or social activities.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea.
It helps you see what really matters to you and how to make time for those things. Yeah, even when you're busy studying.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Right.
And speaking of balance, remember how we talked about routines and rituals?
Oh, yeah.
The guide says to include calming activities, like meditation or walking or exercise.
Right.
It helps you
We'd
focus.
say, so we got the tasks, the motivation, the routines, the self-care. It's all connected.
It is. It's like building a system.
Yeah.
And another part of that system is habit formation.
Oh, right.
The guide talks about the 3 R's again: reminder, routine, reward.
So like
Yeah.
the reminder could be sitting at your desk, the routine is studying, and the reward could be a break or a snack.
Exactly.
It's like training your brain.
It is.
This is so cool. There's so much psychology involved.
I know, right? And speaking of psychology, there's one more thing from the guide: the locus of control.
Oh, yeah. Remind me what that is again.
It's about how people see their control over their lives. People with an external locus of control, they think things just happen to them.
So they feel like they don't have much control.
Yeah, right. But people with an internal locus of control, they believe they can make things happen.
And that's more motivating.
Exactly. Because it makes you feel empowered.
So how do you develop an internal locus of control?
The guide says to pay attention to your self-talk. Like, do you blame others when things go wrong? Or do you look for ways to learn from it
Okay.
and focus on what you can control? Don't waste energy on things you can't change.
Right.
And celebrate your successes, even the small ones.
So it's like a mindset shift.
It is.
Wow. This is amazing.
I know.
It's not just about studying.
Right. It's about life.
Okay. So what else is there?
Well, there's a whole other layer of insight, so stay tuned for the final part, where we'll explore even more strategies.
So we're back for the final part of our deep dive into self-motivation. We've talked about so much already, from like practical tips to psychology.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
It has, but now, what's the big takeaway? What ties it all together?
Well, both sources say self-motivation isn't about becoming some kind of superhuman steady machine, you know, like pushing yourself to the limit all the time.
Right. It's about working with yourself, not against yourself.
Exactly. It's about understanding how your brain works
Yeah.
and what motivates you.
Yeah. And then you can build a system that actually works for you.
Right.
This reminds me of something the university guide said about uncovering your incentive.
Yeah.
What was that about again?
It's about figuring out what really drives you.
Like deep down?
Yeah, like beyond just getting good grades.
So it's like finding your why.
Exactly.
And they had that cool exercise for that.
Right. You write down all the things that bring you joy.
And when you last did them?
Yeah, and then you categorize them, like how much they cost, how much planning they need, and if they're solo activities or social.
Okay. So then,
Well, then you can see
Hmm.
what's really important to you and how to make time for those things.
even when you're super busy with school,
In
it's
the-
all about balance.
Right.
And speaking of balance,
Remember we talked about self-care?
oh yeah, both sources said that was important.
Super important. Because you can't run on empty.
Right. Like if you're burnt out, you're not going to be motivated.
Exactly. So make sure you're sleeping enough, eating healthy, staying hydrated,
Yeah.
and exercising.
And connecting with people?
Yes, that's huge.
It's like having a support system.
Exactly. People who understand what you're going through and who can encourage you.
Yeah. And hold
Yeah.
you accountable.
Oh, yeah, accountability is key. It's like having a workout buddy. You're more likely to show up if you know someone's waiting for you.
That's true.
And don't forget, it's okay to ask for help.
Oh yeah. Like if you're really struggling.
Exactly. Talk to a teacher or a counselor or a tutor.
There are people who want to help.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to recap, we talked about breaking down tasks, finding your why, having routines, but keeping things fresh, believing in yourself, taking care of yourself, and connecting with others.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
But remember, there's no one right way to do this.
Right. It's about finding what works for you. Exactly. And being patient with yourself.
Because some days are harder than others.
That's true.
But the important thing is to keep trying.
And to celebrate your successes.
Yeah, like the university guide said, you have the power to create the life you want.
So true.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into self-motivation. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
And until next time,
Yeah.
happy studying.